Welcome everyone to Belfast TV. For some reason, we are enduring Smallville. This is going to be season 2, episode 6. It is called Redux. So spoilers, should you be concerned for such a thing, will be commencing.
Why would anyone be concerned?
This episode was so boring.
Yeah.
It wasn't enjoyable in a bad way. We weren't laughing a lot. We weren't cracking a lot of jokes. It was just dull.
Yeah, it really was. And the villain was borderline non-existent. So you didn't even have that to enjoy.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure there was a total of 5 scenes with her in, one of which being the final sequence.
Yeah, the villain plot of the week was... It was in the intro scene, but there was a moment where I said, hey, we've not been spending a lot of time with the actual villain plot, have we? And it was almost halfway through the episode, because most of this episode is family drama. Most of this is why Martha's father has a bit of a feud with Jonathan, and Clark feeling like, I want to know my grandfather. And
Nothing gets resolved.
Yeah, Lana's got her own thing going on with her family backstory she's investigating.
And nothing gets resolved.
And that's most of the episode. That's most of it. It was painfully just it was watching these actors try to be dramatic.
Yeah. I'd say probably the best moments, and relative to everything else, if they're not good but best, were probably the stuff with Clark with the new principal.
I think it's because I like that actor more than anything.
Yeah, but even Tom Welling probably had the best acting moments during those sequences. I mean, like little moments as well, just like rolling his eyes. Even when it's stuff when the camera wasn't focusing on him, just the little reactions that he had were probably his best in those scenes than they were in anything else in the episode. Yeah,
the actor playing the new principal who gives Clark a bit of a hard time is Richard Grant. Not to be confused with the British actor Richard E. Grant. But he's the sort of guy who's popped up in a lot of stuff over the years. I remember him from the Mr. Bean movie, but he's in Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. He's in The Big Lebowski. He's just one of those guys, especially in the 90s, I'd say, more than anything, where he seemed to be popping up in a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, this is the early 2000s, is basically still the 90s.
Yeah, he's still been in things throughout the 2000s and even the 2010s. Just episodes of TV shows that I've never seen, so I don't know of any of his recent appearances, but if I'm scrolling down to the 90s, he's in the 1998 Godzilla movie. Fair enough.
Well, it's a paycheck.
Apparently his middle initial is also E, because he's credited on a couple of things as Richard E. Grant.
Yeah, I wonder why that stopped.
He's like, yeah, I don't want to cause any more confusion. He was there. We had a guest star in as well for Martha's father. The farm's doing, despite the fact that Martha's got a new high-paying job from Lionel Luthor, they're still struggling to pay bills.
It's not high-paying enough, so she needs a cupcake business.
It's not. I think that's for Spirit Week. I don't think it's actually a business.
Cupcake business.
She was making a lot of cupcakes, and it made me want a cupcake. Yeah, it does make me question, when is she actually doing any work here? What was her working hours with Lionel? Because it feels like we've forgotten about that.
Probably why he's not paying her very much. She's never
possibly. Maybe she's part-time. She's only there for a couple of days a week.
Yeah,
she works on the weekends. I don't know. So they're struggling. She wants to ask her dad for help, and Jonathan's like, no, but I'm not asking that man for anything. And it all turns out that, her dad didn't want her to marry a hick farmer, was the term I believe they used.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan's held a grudge all these years, and we get repeated scenes in this episode of Clark asking about his grandfather, asking why they can't just patch things up. It's a lot of vague, sort of empty, platitudes of, you guys can work this out. I'll just get you in a room together and you can work it out. And sure enough, when he actually gets them both in the same scene, they do not work it out. They just start fighting immediately.
I hate you. And Neil was like, yeah, I hate you too.
Yeah, you've not changed in 20 years, but my daughter made the biggest mistake of her life. Yeah, you're still the same arrogant old asshole. All right, and then that's it. They go on about their ways.
Which is rich coming from Jonathan.
yeah. But that is a shocking amount of this episode, or those scenes.
It's way too much. How many times does Clark say, I just want a relationship with my grandfather?
Yeah, I think Jonathan at one point says, I know every boy your age wants a relationship with their grandfather. And I'm like, I don't think I gave a shit. But all right.
Yeah, I benefit of the doubt in that I knew my grandparents, so it was just like, oh, you go see them on weekends, every couple of weeks, whatever. Your parents drag you there. So it's not like I was like, oh, I want this relationship. It was more just go and spend time with them. So if anything, it was the opposite. You resent having to go and spend time with them when you'd rather be with your friends.
I wish they were already dead.
I didn't go quite that far, but more just, you wish you could be off doing your own thing as opposed to enforced family time.
It's the vibe I'm getting from you, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just a heartless bastard, because I feel the same way about how much, and I said this in season 1, I'm sure, with her going on and on about her dead parents, but this entire episode, she finds photos of her mum and some guy, and she pulls out the photograph, says, oh, it's my mum and someone I don't know, to which I said, Dad? And how right I might end up being, because the sequence of events is that she's moping about these photographs, and Clark's like, oh, maybe they were just friends. And then Lex is like, oh, they make a good couple. I mean, that can't be it. No, I'm sure there's nothing funny going on. And the whole thing is that this is from just before Lana was born, so her parents were still together. And she's questioning who this guy is who's having a romantic picnic with her mother in the photographs. She asks Lex to look into it, so I guess he gets a PI or something to just, track down who this is. And
he has early Google access.
Apparently. And the final scene of the episode actually is Lana coming to see Clark in the barn and saying, hey, I can't, I need to talk about what was in this file. And it turns out that her parents were not this perfect marriage she's always imagined they were. They actually separated for a year and they were going to get divorced, but they ended up patching things up. But there was this year where these photos were taken where it probably, and she acted, the line that just killed me here and just like my soul just like evaporated just a little bit when she said it, is that there's a chance he might be more than just a friend. I'm like, no shit, Lana, no shit. They were clearly banging.
Those pictures didn't give it away the entire time.
She was begging for that D on that picnic blanket, and he was happy to give it to her. Okay, that's what was happening. With
champagne glasses.
They were at it like a pair of rabbits in the woods, like filthy perverts.
Probably in that field. Probably you're lucky there's not another album next to this one with the pictures of that too.
And then Lana is like, my father may still be alive because I was born like right after my parents get back together. There's a chance that this man is my real father. So I'm assuming we're going to follow this up with a B plot in a coming up episode of her trying to track down this guy who might be her biological father.
And you just know it's going to end with, well, he might be my biological father, but he's not my dad. You know it's ending with that.
That's the most likely outcome. It could also just turn it to be a giant waste of time. No, he's not really your dad either. Just
This show does like to waste time.
It does. This episode felt like a huge, gigantic waste of time.
It did, yeah. It felt a lot longer than 40 minutes.
Oh god, it did. It just like, because we're usually cracking jokes and laughing a lot. That we were just sitting silently enduring the back half of this episode.
It was boring.
Yeah. There's a good. Well, I say good. There's a funny visual effect at the end. I mean, that's about
definitely not good. Good for our entertainment.
Yes.
And good effect. Different sentences there.
Yeah. The other thing with the principal is that he makes Clark write an essay about where he sees himself in 5 years, and I was really predicting this was going to give us our cringy foreshadowing line of dialogue. And I guess he kind of does in the sense that he says he wants to maybe go to journalism school, but that's not cringy though. That's just like, oh no, that's just him saying he wants to.
That's just a goal.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair enough. That one is completely fine.
Yeah.
But I thought he was going to say something, I don't know, about how
he wants to work at the planet.
Maybe that, or maybe something like, I don't know, maybe a job that will take me around the world. I want to fly places or something. I don't know, something.
Yeah.
On the nose.
Like, technically journalism, he goes, in college taking a journalism class, I think technically that is foreshadowing, I guess. But it's more just, it's actually a realistic thing he could have said, as opposed to being a really on-the-nose reference.
Yeah, because he's not predicting anything. He's just saying, "Oh, I might want to go into this," and the fact that that is what his career path ends up being is just that's okay. It's not this weird forced cringy thing.
They've set up that he does occasionally write articles for the Torch, over the past season and a bit. That's an established thing already. The fact that he maybe enjoys that and wants to do more of it is just fine, right?
Yeah.
That's reasonable character writing.
Yeah, the principal also has a history with Lex. He used to be the principal at the fancy prep school that Lex went to, and
we never got the drama of what went down with Lionel, did we?
We never. Well, no, he did admit that his father got him fired, though.
Yeah,
that was the first thing we said. Oh, I bet Lionel got him fired. And sure enough, when Lex comes to say, "Hey, stop being so hard on Clark," he's like, "This reminds me of when your father came and spoke to me, and he said Lex gets to stay and you get to go." So that's all we ever got. All right.
Yeah, is that it though? Because I don't know, the fact that he hasn't. Well, they make a point saying he hasn't worked again since then, which, let's be generous to Lex, is. Well, it was when Lex was 14, so at least 10 years, right?
10 years, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's more of a story there that this episode just didn't get into. I assume that the principal is going to be recurring and we'll maybe get more of it later.
I actually genuinely don't know if he's recurring.
I mean, I'm going to just assume so, because having a recurring principal is not that weird.
No, it makes a lot of sense to have a recurring principal. I'm trying to remember. Like, I don't remember him being here, which makes me think he's a one and done.
I don't either, but I also know that you just looked at his IMDb page and it would have said how many episodes he was in.
I'm looking at Smallville 2002, 1 episode.
Right, scratched from the record everything I just said. Can we edit that out?
Never. Never in a million years. He's a 1 episode wonder, which is weird because they set up at the end that he's going to be. In fact, actually, since I'm checking him, I want to check the grandfather, because Clark at the end says he's made the choice. He wants to have a relationship with his grandfather. What's the betting that the grandfather never shows up again?
Oh, no. By relationship, he meant pen pals.
Oh, is that what he meant? Pen pals.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's a pre-Zoom era.
All right. I'm just going 2002. Where are we? Smallville.
There's no way he's in more episodes.
1 episode.
Hey.
I mean, unless he's recast down the line, which is possible, I suppose, but
it is. I don't remember any of it though.
Yeah. So
but then again, there wasn't a particularly memorable stuff in this episode. So
no. And notice how we've not even talked about the villain plot, because it's set up at the start. There's like 2 scenes in the middle about it. And because it's so like not focused on, the scene that happens very rapidly where Clark's just like, "Hey, that girl over there, she was with 2 of the victims. Maybe there's something going on with her." And Chloe says, "Yeah, I'll go look into her past." And the very next time we see Chloe, "Hey, I found all these photos of her in the 1920s. She's sucking the life out of people every 20 years.
It was really weird. It was like once every 10 years specifically. It was 91, 81, and then they said, all the way going back to 1921. Like, yeah, but we're in 2002.
She's behind schedule.
The show knows it's in 2002 because they make multiple references to it being 2002 in this episode. Why did she? And it feels like it's a really tight schedule. This when it wears out, she has to have those 3 victims immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Within 48 hours, she has to have those 3 victims. Why did she get an extra year out of the last one?
It's a good question.
Would it have killed them to just say 92 and 82 instead?
The episode revolves around because the whole idea is that she like loves high school. She loves being a teenager. She never wants to age. She sees this as the peak of her life. What's funny is that coming into this, I was comparing this to the Buffy episode Go Fish, because that's the one that's swimming related, because this one opens with a swimming team. And I even thought I might have be onto something, because they focused on the coach in that first scene, who never shows up again the rest of the episode.
Coincidence, yeah.
But he is an actor who pops up in things. He was in the movie Valentine around this time, so like he's not like a big name, but he's also a face.
He's a working actor.
Yeah.
These people that we're mentioning, these are all exactly the types of people who are on the picket line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or where, depending on what's happened by the time this comes out. But what's funny is that when we get to her character and the fact that she thinks this is the prime of her life and it'll never be as good as high school again, it actually made me think of another episode of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. A very early episode called Witch, in which a witch is swapped bodies with her daughter so she could be a teenager again and relive her glory days of being a cheerleader.
Yeah.
What made me think of.
I'm honestly, I'm surprised Buffy didn't explore this more, given that you have vampires who don't age, right? Like, it would have seemed an easy target for it.
It's because once they become vampires, they don't care about all this meaningless shit.
There is that too.
Because the whole thing revolves around her being the one spearheading. What's this week called? What do they call it?
Spirit Week.
Was it Spirit?
Because that's meaningless.
We talked last the review about how this whole high school spirit and school spirit thing's a bunch of nonsense to us. We don't have that here.
Spirit Week.
Spirit Week. This is a thing that American high schools do.
Is it? I don't know if this one is or if it's just a thing that this show does.
I suspect that it's maybe regional. Maybe in certain states it's a big thing. I buy that a town like Smallville makes a big deal out of this because what else has Smallville got going on?
Corn.
What, they like freaking a leash?
Hey, you know they do. In 2002, yes, they do.
That's why that was a good joke. It was a topical for the time period reference.
I don't actually know when Freak on a Leash came out, but it's got to be not far from that.
I was definitely out by that point. I don't know exactly when it came out, but yeah. So yeah, her whole thing is that she's sucking the life out of people. But seemingly she doesn't have to be there in the moment because the first victim she kisses before he goes swimming in the race, and he goes old and dies in the water during the race. So it's not like she's sucking them out. Like,
it's not an instant transfer.
Yeah,
there's a buffer.
So, which is good from a getting away with the point of view because she can sort of piss off before they die, and you know
it is convenient. Yeah.
Because you wouldn't, obviously this swimming thing is suspicious because this teenager's age to look like he's 90 in the span of seconds. But there's nothing to suggest there's a perpetrator in the moment. You know, it's like he's in the pool swimming with everyone else and they're all fine.
And then he's dead, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing. There's a little bit before this where the villain girl is talking to Lana and says, "Hey, isn't Clark hot?" And she's like, "Who, Clark?" And it's just we're back at the awkward flirtations, but it's like all the bad stuff didn't happen the last two episodes that made her mad at him. That's all just been
there's
forgotten.
Like one reference to it. I don't remember what it was exactly. I think it was when Lex, Lana, and Clark were in the Talon, and Lex says something, and Clark just looks away a little bit awkwardly, like, oops.
Yeah. No, isn't that when he says, "Oh, they make a good couple," but the photographs, and Clark's just like, "Oh, this is awkward." No, is it something else?
No, it's something about those two that makes him look away awkwardly.
Which, don't get me wrong, Lana does occasionally make a little digger joke about Kent's having secrets, but I don't really consider that to be tied to what he's done the past couple episodes. That's been him since episode
Clark
1.
Being Clark.
Yeah, that's been just his consistent status with her. So
yeah,
leave that where it is. But so yeah, there's really not much to this. The only other scenes you get with her is the principal goes to talk to her and says, "Hey, I'm getting to know all the students," which in a typical high school, that's a lot of students to get to know. But I wanted, your records aren't up to date. What school did you come from? Which made me wonder, yeah, how did she enroll in this school exactly? Like, what was the process of her sneaking her way in to being a student?
Yeah, I don't know the semantics of it, but also try not to think about that too hard because then you have to think about Clark's papers. And I'm sure that is addressed at some point.
That does come up. If I remember correctly, so shield your ears if you don't want any minor spoilers for future seasons. But I believe Lionel had something to do with doctoring them for them.
Lionel's shenanigans was what I thought as well.
Yes, I believe there's something there. So, yeah, basically she's running out of time, and she ends up luring the principal to the Talon where they're going to have their Spirit Week cheerleading show.
I don't know, but whatever it is, everything is set to the same song. Every time someone dies, or the attempted murder in this case, it's the same song.
Be aggressive, yes, whatever that song is.
And like the first time, it's unrelated. It's just at the swimming thing. The final time, it does seem like it's set up for the cheerleader thing. So I guess that's why it's playing it the second time as well. But are they just playing it on a loop on this final time, like ready for when they come in? Like it seems really forced. Like there's there's a set amount of songs they were allowed to buy for this, licenses for this episode. So they had to, just reuse the same one a couple of times.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you.
It was just weird to me that it was like all 3 times was the same song.
They thought they could get away with it, I guess. Not to say that there's not other songs, because there is multiple other songs in the episode, but maybe that's just adding to the point of like they were at their
they had a limit, and they were like, we'll use this one for this all 3 times, and it'll be a thematic recurrence.
Yeah. It's not like you've got a composer writing score that you could just trust to do something instead.
Yeah, why would they do that?
Yeah. So she knocks the principal out, but Clark gets there in time. And they've got like this spinning like mirror cube like on the stage. It looks kind of fancy because it's spinning on its tip. But it's only there though because they want to do this thing where she's aging really quick. So every time it spins around, you see a glimpse of her reflection, and you see it like maybe 5 times. And then there's a really bad visual effect, which is maybe the only time in the episode that I properly laughed, was this visual effect of her, honestly, not unlike a vampire dusting on the hit television show.
Yeah. I think the funniest moment for me during this was they had this really bad effect for one of those shots in the mirror. And I thought, this is why they've done it with the mirror, so they can hide.
Yeah, you thought that was a good technique of like, okay, you get a glimpse of it, but you don't get to dwell on how bad it kind of looks.
Yeah, we'll show it for like half a second while it's there, while it flashes through, but no big deal. And then it just focuses fully on it, and I went, never mind. That stylistic effect as opposed to budget restraint.
Yeah,
and it looked terrible, and the cartoon eyes just stayed behind the rest of the body at the end.
Yeah, I mean the vampires listed on Buffy don't look amazing by today's standards by any means, but they're always this quick thing. They're consistent, and they don't have cartoon eyes that stay there just to really accentuate like the low CG quality of the TV show.
Yeah,
but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, this villain plot is like an afterthought. It is so undercooked in this episode. And like even if I'm trying to think like thematically how it ties to the plot with Clark and his grandfather, like they're talking about mistakes in the past and stuff like that, but none of it's about like wanting to be young or reliving your glory days or anything like that.
At best, you could say it's about living in the past, and Jonathan and the grandfather are both living in the past.
Yeah, I guess.
Like at best, I feel like we're doing them a lot of credit by reaching for this as it is, though, as opposed to the reality was just, it'll do.
Yeah, I don't think the themes of the villain plot and the family plots link up. And the family plot is way too much screen time for what is effectively a very repetitive debate of the same information over and over again. There's little evolution to it as it goes on, so it feels like you're just hitting the same points over and over again. And when it does get to the end, you feel like you've not really had any kind of proper arc for anything, because like nothing does kind of advance other than Clark just saying that he wants to still stay in touch with his grandfather in some way. And don't get me wrong, there is maybe a possible good lesson for Clark to learn that you can't fix everything. Sometimes things are just you can't mend.
It didn't teach him that lesson.
No, it didn't.
Not
no.
really.
So
it ends with him going, well, screw you, I'm going to have a relationship anyway.
Pretty much.
Which he then proceeds to never have.
Yeah. So this review is almost half as long as the last couple, but there's nothing to talk about. We're done.
There's a lot less in this episode.
Yeah. Because don't get me wrong, last episode was garbage. It was laughably bad, but that's the key thing, is that it was laughable.
Much more entertaining. Objectively, it was worse. On a pure, just objective level of quality, this is better. But I'd still rather watch the last episode than this one. Yeah,
this was them trying to do more low-key drama, which, if the writing and the acting were up to something, that would be something, but it ain't. So it's just painfully dull to get through it. Not a single plotline in this was remotely, like, amusing. And all I want from these Smallville rewatches is to be amused, if not occasionally laughing out loud at how bad it is. And this was thoroughly not in that camp. But don't worry, I'm sure there'll be more stupidity to come. in the
Oh, that will
forthcoming
be, yeah.
episodes. Next up on Smallville, episode 7, we have Lineage. So here's the description per IMDb. A woman appears in Smallville claiming that Clark is her biological son by Lionel Luthor. Oh, baby. This already sounds much better. And she kidnaps Lex to force a confession from Lionel.
There's no way this episode's bad.
Well, it's going to be bad. It's going to be terrible.
But there's no way I'm not. Look, I'm not going to be bored watching this one.
Holy shit. And then the second line, which I hadn't read yet, Clark demands that his parents explain the role that Lionel played in his adoption. We literally just brought that up. I thought that was going to be like season 3 or 4 or some shit like that. But
no,
okay.
It's the next episode.
It's the very next episode.
We're on it. We've got this show dead to rights.
So
it's going to be an entertaining one.
I presume this woman's child was taken, and she's assuming that because Lionel had a hand in the adoption papers with Clark, that was her baby that was given to the kids. I'm assuming that's what she thinks.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But we'll find out. She kidnaps Lex. I love how I just casually put that in the second half of that sentence.
That's at least the second time Lex has been kidnapped in this show.
Oh, Lana's, I'm sure, has been kidnapped already. I don't know about Chloe and Pete yet, but the time will come if they haven't been yet.
Pete's definitely been kidnapped at least once.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that was the first one back we did a few weeks ago with the Doctor got him. That's right. Joe Martin from Terminator 2 and Speed. He kidnapped him.
A lot of kidnappings in this show.
Well, actually, there's a thing here in this episode where they're talking about the murders or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, it's another week in Smallville, another thing in the wall. And I'm like, yeah, it's literally every week there's a new villain doing something. Do you think that's weird for such a small town?
Yeah, not over the summer.
It's not the summer, though.
No, exactly. There was nothing over the summer. It's not every week.
Oh, that's what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, it's funny how it seems to sync up with the TV schedule, isn't it?
Convenient, yeah. Their borderline defense is it's mostly high schoolers committing the problems. So, of course, they're doing it when they're around everyone else in town.
That reminds me of like the one good joke Arrow might have ever had is that it was the season finale, there's a villain taking siege of the city, and someone goes, oh, must be May. Because the season finale is always in May.
Yeah.
Oh dear. All right, that's our thoughts on this very dull, boring ass episode of Smallville. We'll see you next time for Lineage. So, let us know what you think. You can support all the content over at Patreon, and we're way ahead on these Smallville reviews on Patreon. So I don't know how far we'll be ahead by the time this goes out publicly, but right now we're like 20 weeks ahead on Patreon. So if you want some early episodes, go over there and support us at the early access tier. But that is us. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching better TV, and will someone please save me?